Hi guys, welcome back to the Females Disruptors Virtual Summit. We have our next talk. It's going to be one I'm super excited about, Money Talks. Think it, feel it, write it. And leading this conversation is Ashleigh Rennie. She's the owner of Story Team. And Ashleigh, I know you've got a really beautiful story to share on kind of like how you've come about this and your career and learning the power of language and how that can be utilized to create opportunities. So I will pass it over to you and let you share your story.
Thank you so much, Jess. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you to everyone, and obviously the ladies who are part of the summit, who have registered, who are here. I am so thrilled to be part of this and to be bringing you some of my knowledge. So I don't have any slides to share. I just want to talk to you. I just want to share my story with you. And I'm going to ask you some questions. And if you want to drop your answers in the chat, please do so. This is a two-way conversation, and I'd love to know where you are at. So the first question I want to ask you right now is, do you identify as a writer? That is the very first thing. I know that writing can be very scary, and it can be, you know, full on, and it can sort of mess with our heads a little bit. So I would love to know, and I'm not going to call anyone out, I just want to know for myself, do you identify as a writer? If you do identify as a writer, are you writing in a way that is trying to tick all the boxes? So do you use a particular tone? Do you write in a particular way? Do you try and satisfy a particular kind of reader, or do you try and emulate another kind of writer? Okay, so if you are a writer, are you writing in a way that is trying to tick boxes? And the second question is, if you don't identify as a writer, are you scared of it? So just in your answer, say, yes, I do identify and I do tick boxes, or no, I don't try and tick the boxes, or I'm not a writer and I am scared of it, or I'm not a writer and I'm not scared of it, just to sort of get a feel for where you are. If you said, or if you think, if you're too nervous to put it in the chat and you'd rather just keep that to yourself, if you think that you should be ticking all the boxes as a writer, and if you think as a non-writer that you need to be scared of it, it's very possible that you are wrong. And I am going to try and tell you my story so that you can get an idea of why. Someone says, I'm a writer and I'm sometimes scared of it. I'm a writer and I'm always scared of it. So I'm just putting that out there. So I want to tell you a little bit about my story. I am South African. If you, that's my accent, that's where I'm from. I'm from South Africa. I live in London. And when I turned sort of 12 or 13, we became very, 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 very poor, like incredibly poor. We lost our house. We lost all our money. We lost our cars. My parents had savings and education policies. They were gone. And the reason for that was that my father was an alcoholic, and he had stopped paying some of our bills that my mom didn't really know about, because my mom wasn't involved in the finances of our family. She raised us, her three daughters. And before we knew it, my father had got us into a financial situation where the only way we could get out was to sell everything. So we ended up living in a cottage on a plot in a residential area in Johannesburg. We were three late adolescent teenagers in a room all together. My two sisters shared a bunk bed, and I was in a single bed in the room. And we were in what I can really only describe as like the pits of hell. So my dad was basically comatose for years and years and years. He had blackouts. He couldn't remember anything. My mother had to take on a full-time job as a nursery school teacher, and she looked after babies for a really long time. And there was I don't know if any of you know anyone who has an addiction or has a problem with alcohol or drugs, but there was this feeling in our home of absolute rage, complete torment. My mother was hysterical all the time because we had no money, and she had these three children to bring up. And it was the beginning of my absolute fear of money. And I don't use the word fear lightly. I was incredibly frightened of money. I was frightened of the power that it held. I was frightened of not ever being able to earn any. And I just thought I would end up like my parents. I was afraid of asking for money. I was afraid of not asking for money. I was afraid of handling money. Anything to do. I had a complete poverty mentality. I absolutely believed I would be poor for the rest of my life. And so what did I do as a sort of fresh out of high school young female? Did I study medicine? Did I study science? Did I study law? No, I decided to be a performer. So I went into one of the most volatile professions and industries you could ever imagine. And I went to drama school in Johannesburg, and I was like, I'm going to be a performer. And of course, my fear of money just grew and grew and grew, because I very quickly realized that being a performer anywhere in the world, let alone in South Africa, was not going to make me any money. And I had to pivot incredibly quickly. And as well as being a performer, I had to find another way to make money. And because I'm creative, and because I loved writing as a child, I decided that writing would be the thing that would make me money. And I started off as a radio drama writer. So I wrote radio plays, and I wrote on South Africa's for our national broadcaster, and I wrote on a long-running soap opera for about 7 years. And very slowly, I started to turn towards content creation and copywriting. And I started really doing that quite seriously when I think it was 2011. And that just grew and grew and grew. And I got freelance clients in, and it was all to mitigate this absolute fear of never having money. But I still didn't have the kind of money that I wanted, and I was sort of living hand to mouth, and I was managing to cover my bills, but I wasn't actually earning the kind of money that makes you feel free, you know, like financially free. And you could, I couldn't buy a car, I couldn't buy a house. It was just completely crazy. And what ended up happening in the last 3 years, so incredibly recently, is that I, along with my husband, decided to emigrate to London, to be in a country where firstly, the economy was just more stable and stronger, and I felt more held, and I felt like there was more opportunity, but also because I wanted to perform here, because, you know, this is really the home of theatre, the West End, but obviously besides New York, and I wanted to be in a place where I was surrounded with culture, and I was surrounded by this sort of mecca of art and theatre. And I'd been here for 8 months, and in March 2019, everything got shut down because of COVID. And so I found myself again in a situation where I had made this like major life decision, and it felt like it had completely backfired, and I was quite hysterical. And I decided that I was going to build a business, a copywriting business. That was going to be my thing. And the very first question that I had to ask myself was, how do you build a business and network and build a community of people who trust you and who want to hear from you, so that they eventually buy from you, right? And so I started this business from my car. I got a job as a care worker. I was literally between homes with my private care clients, and I was running this business from my car. And I realized quite quickly that the way I could reach people was by writing. Like, that was my strength. That was what I was going to do. So I started to write, and I wrote blogs. I thought every business needs a foundation, right? So some businesses have podcasts, other people have vlogs, and other people have blogs. And I thought, that's my dog. And I thought, I'm gonna start a blog, and that's gonna be the foundation of my business. And that is how I'm gonna start running this this thing, and I'm going to start connecting with people and networking with people and getting them to like me and trust me. So that is a big decision to start a blog, because really, what do you write about? And I had all these obstacles about what would I write about? Who was I to write a blog? Who would read my blog? And so I want you to think to yourself now and write it down on a piece of paper if you have to. What is your biggest obstacle to writing? So if I said to you now, start a blog for your business, what would be the biggest obstacle to that? Aside from tech, because tech you can figure out, but what in your mind is your biggest obstacle? So I am a copywriter. That is what I do. I very quickly, thanks to my blog and my content creation, I've managed to build a business where I have clients all over the world. I've quit my day job. I stopped the care work. My business completely sustains my lifestyle. It's been incredible. And it has been absolutely 100% because of the content that I put out in my business. So I want to cover with you how you can make money by writing, but writing in a very particular kind of way, because it is a very specific thing that needs to happen. And I call it, I have a little framework, and I call it my KISS framework, because who doesn't love kisses? And this is how I write, and it's how I build my business. So KISS is KISS, and each letter stands for something. And so K stands for kick the boring to the curb. And one of the things I did when I started my blog was I started to write, like I mentioned earlier, I started to write in a way that was ticking all the boxes. So, you know, what did a blog look like? And what was the feel of a blog? And what did blogs have to cover? And what was the subject matter that I should be writing about? So I wrote blogs about project management tools and how to start a business, and just stuff that I wasn't really feeling. I was just writing to tick a box of some kind. And about a year ago, I had an experience on a train here in London that was very upsetting. It wasn't traumatic, it was upsetting, and it was shocking to me, and I was very affected by it. And I got home and I wrote this blog, and I wrote it in 20 minutes, and I didn't publish it. I sat with it and I slept on it, because I thought this is like completely different from anything I've ever put out on my blog. And I just looked at it the next morning because I didn't want to post it in a sort of very emotional state. And I tweaked it a bit the next morning, and I posted it. And within 24 hours, that blog had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of views. I had been contacted by women all over the world who just messaged me either on the blog or on my social media or directly, and said to me, this blog has spoken to me in a way that I haven't been spoken to before, or I'm a really busy mom and I don't read anything, but I read this. And I started to get this community of people reading my blog because of this one blog that I had written. And the blog was a story. It was a story about something that had happened to me. It reflected an experience. It reflected a way that I responded to that experience. And I put it out there, and it was absolutely authentic, because I think I was still crying when I wrote it. So it was absolutely real, absolutely authentic. And it touched people, and it showed people who I was, and it honed in on a particular kind of person that I want to work with. So the kind of blog that it is it would speak to women who stand up for other women. It speaks to feminists. It speaks to women who've been in situations that are vulnerable, where there are men around. And it showed people who I was. And so the power of a story, any life story in your blog, is that it will touch the people you want it to touch. And those are the people that you want to work with in the long term. Those are the people who are your community. They most likely have the same values as you. They most likely believe in the kinds of things that you do. They most likely don't want to take advantage of you. And that kind of content creation is what is going to speak to people and draw them in and create a following. So I want you to think now about the story in your life that you're most afraid of telling, the story in your life that makes you feel a little bit like, I can't share that. The story in your life that makes you go, I don't know what my family would say if I shared that. That's the story that you need to write. That's the story that you need to consistently write in your content. Not all the time, not every blog you write, about 25% of the time. That is the content you need to be creating, because that is the stuff that people have a very visceral response to, and they will want to hear more from you. So, I mean, one of the other things that we need to think about when we kick boring to the curb is we need to think about the fact that people enjoy storytelling, they enjoy entertainment, they enjoy drama. So your blog doesn't have to be serious and sort of hectic and dark. It can be really funny. It can be something hilarious, you know, just so long as it touches people. And that is what I mean by kicking boring to the curb. The I is for inviting interaction, and this will happen once you've actually done the hard grafting and you've written the blog. So share that blog far and wide, share it in all the Facebook groups you're a part of, share it on your Instagram, share it on your LinkedIn, share it in email, share it with your family, share it with your friends, because the more people who see that and share it themselves, you'll have this sort of exponential ripple effects of people interacting and engaging with it. And when people interact with it, so they comment on it, respond to them, have a conversation with them, make them know that you've seen them, that you've heard them, that you're interested in what they have to say. And if that means you have to set aside like 15 minutes a day to do that in your daily work schedule, that has to be in your diary every single day. So I is a very quick thing about interaction. The S is for if you want. The S is for a sexy opt-in. So whatever you've written about in your blog, at the bottom, be sure to have some sort of call to action. And that call to action can be a lead magnet that you've developed. It can be saying, here's my website, go and check out some more of my work, or I'd love to connect with you, sign up to my mailing list. So always just make sure that you have some sort of sexy opt-in at the end of your blog, so that you are gathering leads, which is a very important part of business, right? We're businesswomen. I'm a businesswoman. I need to grow my list. I have a quiz and I build quizzes for other people, and quizzes are very sexy opt-ins because they provide so much value. So have something at the end of your blog that's gonna keep people on your page, looking at your stuff, interested in what you have to say. And then the final S is segmentation. Now this can look like many things. So when you create this content that is difficult or funny, or maybe it alienates people, or some people might say, I don't know, this isn't for me. This is good because you want to hone in on the person that is right for you. And content that is created from a real place of authenticity and storytelling and your life experience, you will very quickly see who wants to read that content and who doesn't. And the people who don't want to read that content, that is totally fine, amazing. They can go and find the content that works for them. But the people who do want to read your content will keep coming back. And that is how you segment an audience in a really powerful way. You can do that even further with a quiz. So a quiz, when people actually go through your quiz and tick the boxes, the software will automatically segment people, and then you can target people according to their gender, their age, their interests, and you can really create beautiful content and emails that speak to those specific people. But segmentation is really, really powerful for making sure that you're speaking to the people that you want to speak to. I think I have 5 minutes left, and I don't want to run over because there may be questions. But what I do want to say to you is that it can be really, really scary initially to write these stories. And so I would suggest that you just write for yourself, maybe for a bit, and you just sit on that and you work with it and you figure out which story you're really feeling and which one you feel like you can put out there, and really commit to that and do that every day. Because the more we write, the more we understand what we want to write. And that's why I asked in the beginning, who are writers and who's scared of writing and who doesn't feel like they're a writer. It doesn't matter what business you run or what you do in your life, or whether you're a mom or you walk dogs for a living, or you are a yoga instructor, or you are a web developer. You can write. You can't write like a writer, but no one wants to read stuff. No one wants to read a blog that is written like a writer. People want to read blogs that move them. They want to read content that inspires them and makes them think and gives them value. And so don't worry about not being a writer, because if the story is powerful enough, that really is all that matters. The writing itself is secondary, and if you're a writer, of course you have to know how to write. But if you're not a writer, don't even worry about not being a writer. Worry about what you know and your story, and how you can inspire other people, other women, other people like you. Teach them what you know, show them what you've learned through your own experiences. That, I think, is the kind of content that will keep people with you and keep them coming back for more. And ultimately, if you do run a business, will turn people into buyers. It can take a long time. It can take 6 months. It can take a year. So that's why you've got to create this content really regularly and be absolutely unapologetic about the stuff you believe in, the stories you want to tell, the conversations you want to have, because those are the things that are going to start to attract the people that you really, really want to work with. So I want you to think about those questions that I asked you. Think about that question, what are you most afraid of when you write? And think about how you can overcome that fear by just writing your story, one story. Any story. It can be a story from childhood. It can be something that happened to you in the car yesterday. It can be an argument you had with someone. It can be an amazing experience you had with your child. It can be anything. Think about that story and then try and write it. And I almost guarantee that that fear will subside as you start writing. I hope this has been helpful. If you ever feel doubtful about this, I want you to just think of me, this very poor, very poor child growing up in Johannesburg who just, I don't know, just came to London, did the things, sat in the freezing cold winter in my car with the heater running and the engine on while I started this business, and know that it is completely possible. And I didn't study writing. I just tell stories, and just be brave in telling your story. That's the biggest piece of advice that I can give you. Thank you so much for having me.
That's amazing, Ashleigh. Thank you so much for your story. It's incredible to see just how far you've come and all the amazing things that you're doing. Before we wrap up, I actually had a question for you. You've got some really great feedback from the comments, so I hope you had a chance to check those out. But I know that with my experience in writing, writing can be very personal, right? Like even if you're doing it professionally, writing is a very personal thing. What are some suggestions you have for those that maybe fear that criticism of, okay, if I'm going to write professionally, but then you get like that one client who's like, I don't like your writing, that's a hard jab to take, as a writer. So what are some pieces of advice that you can offer people in the process of rejection?
So, I mean, this is a really, really fantastic question. And there are a couple of answers to this. The first thing you have to know about is whether you are writing for this client as a content writer or a copywriter, because those two things are different. If you are writing for them as a content writer, so you're creating blogs, articles, thought leadership pieces, social media contents, it's really, really important that you know your client's voice. And it's really important that your client knows their voice. And a lot of clients don't know their voices. And then that makes your job really hard, because you want to be writing in their voice, not in your voice, because you write in your voice when you write for your own business. But when you're writing for a client, you have to write, according to their voice, their brand, what they stand for. So what I do is I have a brand voice document, and I hand that out to every single client that I work with, and I make them fill it out, and I will not start the work until they have filled it out. And the brand voice document is really quite in depth, and it asks them lots of questions about how they speak, common phrases that they use, the kinds of language they love, the kinds of vocabulary that they use. Do they contract their words? Do they elide things? Like I try and get a huge sense of how this person speaks, and then I try and replicate that. So I'll also read tons of their stuff. I'll make copious notes while we're in a meeting having a conversation. I try and meet with the clients for at least an hour before I start working, so I can get a sense of what makes them tick. But that also means if you have to be super relaxed, and you have to make them feel super relaxed so that they can be who they are. So that's for content. For copy, which is a whole other thing, copy is, it's sales writing, right? It's marketing and sales writing. And so what you need to know is, what are the client's pain points, objectives, objections, dreams, goals, what's keeping them up at night, what's waking them up at 3 o'clock in the morning and rattling around their heads, what are they thinking about when they should be meditating, but they've got, so like, and that's how you create great copy. And so then when a client comes back to you and says, I don't like this, you have research, and you have to push back a little bit and say, but we've done this research, and this is what the research has yielded, and we need to trust the research. And then what you do is you run analytics on what you've written. So you run analytics on your web page or your sales page or whatever. And then if the data shows you it's not working, then you say to the client, okay, let's try something else. But if the data shows you it's working, then the client was wrong, and the client must trust the writer.
That's excellent advice. Excellent advice. Ashleigh, thank you so much for your candor and for sharing your story with everyone, and just inspiring us all to, use the power of words to express our stories and to make a profit, damn it, while doing it. So
absolutely.
For everyone who's watching, thank you so much. You can check out Ashleigh, follow the story team. She is offering, I think it's an hour copy audit for your business. So everyone who's registered for this conversation will have a chance to win that. So keep an eye out for that. Ashleigh, have a great day. Take care of yourself, and thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
Bye.